you pray with me? Holy and gracious God, we seek your Spirit now. Move among us, speak to us, that these words reflect your words, that these thoughts reflect your thoughts, and your voice might be heard this day. We pray in your Son's name. Amen. This morning we began in the lectionary a walk through one of the most well-known stories of the Bible. Perhaps even the most well-known story outside of the New Testament. It is the Exodus story, and is one that most of us, if not all of us, know well. 1,000 movies have been made of it. Maybe not literally, but pretty close. From the Charleston Heston film, The Ten Commandments, that used to air annually on the network television, to The Prince of Egypt, a cartoon of my childhood that still holds up pretty good. And soon will be a Broadway show once Broadway opens. It's a story we know most of the parts of. We know and remember the burning bush, the 10 plagues. We remember that 10th plague and the Passover event that goes along with it. We remember passing through the Red Sea, and the coming to Mount Sinai, the 10 Commandments. And all of these you will hear in the coming weeks in the lectionary. But this morning, our lectionary text tells a part of the story that we sometimes forget. We sometimes overlook. It happens to be my favorite part of the Exodus story. 5 women. 5 women were the only ones named in this story, who through their collective action make the rest of the Exodus story possible. 5 women of liberation, whose actions are wise and shrewd and full of justice, and who stand even thousands of years later as an example of, for us, in modern day. These women did not end the injustice that was slavery for the Israelites, but their work and faithfulness got the ball rolling, and we shouldn't overlook them. They begin with Shiphrah and Puah, 2 midwives that helped the Hebrews give birth. Midwives do that. We don't know if these 2 are the only 2 midwives who served the Hebrews, or if they were, as some have suggested, sort of the heads of the midwifery guild who gave all the instructions. But we do know that they got directions from the king of Egypt. Now, the king of Egypt really is Pharaoh, but Pharaoh is so inconsequential in this story that not only is he never named in the book of Exodus, but here, even his title is wrong. The king, the Pharaoh, seeks their help in a murderous scheme. If a child is born to the Hebrews as a girl, Pharaoh says, let it live. But if it's a boy, kill it. But these 2 women, and perhaps their guild under them, fear God. And they know that you shouldn't kill people, much less baby boys who have just been born. But they refuse to do so. And when called to Pharaoh to give account for why all these baby boys keep being alive and not dead, they give the flimsiest of excuses. And friends, if you tune out the whole rest of this sermon, listen and enjoy the chutzpah these women use when talking to Pharaoh. It's something to behold. And I paraphrase. We would commit child murder, O Pharaoh, but these foreign slave women are just so much stronger and vigorous than native Egyptians that we just can't. The kids are born already. They know they're alive. So, sorry, Pharaoh, we just can't do it. That's some really passive-aggressive work there. And I love it. I love these 2 women. through their efforts, and perhaps through the example they set for the guild of the midwives, Pharaoh loses his first chance to commit genocide. His next will be more effective. Failing to recruit the midwives who commit murder, he instead expands his pool of applicants and orders all of Egypt to throw any baby boy into the Nile. And many baby boys do then die, or so we ought to assume. But here, Moses' mother, who we later learn not in this text is named Jochebed, Jochebed shows her cunning and her chutzpah because she follows directions. She does throw Moses into the Nile, or at least gently places him there. Moses goes into the Nile. Hey, the law has been followed, Pharaoh. Of course, she gets the basket that she seals so it won't sink, and she gives her Miriam to watch over him and keep harm from coming. But Jochebed literally does the instructions Pharaoh gives. She just twists them a little bit so that Moses does not drown. And Miriam, as I said, watches and waits to keep her brother from harm. The watchfulness is rewarded. As Pharaoh's daughter finds the baby and decides to raise him like a son. Even though Pharaoh's daughter knows that she's supposed to fear this baby, to hate this baby, her own father would want her to kill this baby, she decides to love and care for him instead. But first she needs a nurse. And so Miriam comes and fetches Moses' own mother to nurse and be paid to nurse Moses for the princess of Egypt. And you better believe, by the way, that Pharaoh's daughter is not stupid. She knew what was going on. But her love for this new baby was enough to overcome any fear that Pharaoh was trying to instill. Now these two women, unlike the midwives, don't save all the baby boys of the Hebrews, just one. Well, that one, being Moses, is pretty important, and it's still life-saved. It doesn't matter how big the work of liberation you do does. It doesn't matter if you overturn a whole system or just save a few lives. It's still the work of liberation. These three too are women of liberation. And through their efforts, Moses himself will become the figure of liberation that we know that for thousands of years has been a symbol and example of what it means to be set free. Together, these five women of our whole story empower the work that is to come. Others will pick up the torch they have started. But the liberation of the Hebrew people, of the people of God, begins with these five women. The work of God begins with the small efforts they do here at the beginning of Exodus. But why take the time now in this sermon to tell their stories here in this sermon? Well, for one, because, as I said, we often neglect these stories, especially the midwives. We pass over them ourselves to get to the good stuff. And I wanted to give them some space, because these stories are important, they matter, they're fun, and we ought to know them and hear them. But also, these stories can and should inspire us. For there are still empires to oppose and injustice to work against. And few of us can be like Moses. Few of us can be ones who come and overturn entire systems with God-given plagues and passing of the Red Sea and almost magic wands. Most of us will be like these five women, doing our small bits for God's kingdom. Bit by bit by bit. And trusting that God can use even the small things we do for the work of justice in the world. and there is work to do. For we live in a world full of so much injustice, poverty, racism, phobias of all kinds, and so many isms we can barely name them all. Yet within this world we are placed and called to strive toward the kingdom, called to be the workers of justice, called to be men and women of liberation and peace. Sometimes we might be asked to do as the midwives did and disobey unfair and unjust laws, like those men and women at the lunch counters in the 60s did, despite the absolute hatred of the authorities and the population of their day. Sometimes we're called to be like those who today leave water in the desert, in the Sonoran Desert in Arizona, even though at times there have been laws written to forbid just that, because they understand that saving lives of those trying to cross that desert are more important than any laws, even immigration ones. We are called to ask always, not what is legal, at least not first, but what is fair and right and just, and then strive to live in just those ways. Sometimes, like I'm pretending Jochebed did, we're called to work within the system, even if we take the system's rules and turn them on their head a little bit. And that, I said, that's what Moses' mom did, after all. She did throw her son in the Nile. That's what I imagine we're doing when we involve ourselves in national and local politics. Writing our congressfolk or our legislators in Indianapolis. Writing President Trump or Governor Holcomb. Being a part of campaigns, local and national. Taking risks, even to talk politics among friends and family occasionally, because it's important to us. That's a risk, friends. And of course, voting on Election Day as we collectively strive to imagine a better world. These two are acts of justice that we're called into. Sometimes we might be called to open our house, our friendship circle, our place of business, our place of worship, to a person or a group of people who are otherwise being excluded. Sometimes we are called to ask who is not being welcomed by society and by those around us, and then ask what actions we can take to extend that welcome. How to make our homes, our businesses, our sanctuaries, a place where the poor are welcomed, where those with mental illnesses are welcomed, where folk of all races feel welcomed, where people of all sexualities feel welcomed. How can we, like Pharaoh's daughter, find a way to welcome even those society warned us against? See them not as those to be feared, but those beloved and cared for, just as Moses was. I have easy answers here, by the way, friends. That's a deep question that we need to keep grappling with every day. But it's important. For it lies at the heart of our faith. It lies at the heart of our call to be workers of justice and righteousness and shalom. So we keep asking those questions, these questions, each and every day. Trusting that by God's grace we come closer every time we ask. The Exodus story, the whole story really, is one of liberation and freedom. In the coming weeks, we will hear about how God worked through Moses to set the people free and bring them back to the promised land. But it all begins here with these 5 women. None of them by themselves were able to effect great change. None of them made Pharaoh cower in fear. The chains of slavery were not broken by their small actions of justice in the world. But their part of the story matters. Because through them, God was able to begin great work of liberation that God was about. Through their small works, the kingdom came closer. We are called to do the same. To be the hands and feet of God, working for justice in our world, wherever we see it. To be men and women and children and youth, and high school students and middle school students and elementary school students of liberation and justice. Let us answer that call